Hello, everybody. Chris Lugo here from the new podcast platform that I'm going to be rolling out, Renewed Volition. I want to thank everybody for joining me, and I'm excited to launch the first inaugural interviews, for the platform, which will be hopefully you'll find it just as exciting as I do. And we look forward to bringing you a lot of great guests, a lot of insight, and a lot of knowledge for everybody to take home. And I'm excited to have my guest here today. My guest here is a Cook College, Rutgers University, New Brunswick graduate, who went on to New Jersey Dental School, part of the Legacy University of Medicine and Dentistry in Newark, now part of Rutgers University, and received his orthodontics certification at Columbia University. I'm very, very excited to have with me today Dr. Scott Galkin, DMD orthodontist. Scott, thank you so much for joining me today on my inaugural initial podcast out from a new platform. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be the inaugural podcast, and I've been excited about this opportunity to speak to you for a while.
I'm so thrilled to have you. Because when I was thinking of the platform, Volition, what that means, drive to do things, to constantly improve. You made my short list, man. I'm like, I gotta reach out to Dr. Galkin and have him on here today. And thanks so much for joining me. So when we think about volition and drive and interests, like within people, a lot of times we could actually pinpoint something early on in childhood. I know that I can, that actually sparked interests and encouraged me to follow up either with, reading books or maybe wanting, my parents to take me to another museum or something to learn a little bit more. When you from where you are today, a successful orthodontist and very, very successful, always ranked amongst the top in New Jersey. And when you think about going back to like your elementary school years, was there anything that stands out to you as being like a driving force, or something that just actually happened that led to your curiosity and your drive to lead you down this path?
That's a great question, and I've spoken to a lot of people about this for themselves, but for me, I do remember, and it's still a fascination of mine, is I'm in a science type field. I had to study science in school, high school to college, and even my dental training. But my science interest was sparked by my love and my fascination with space, outer space.
Interesting.
I remember going to Air and Space as a kid. I remember going to Kennedy Space Center, and to this day, I think if I wasn't an orthodontist, I would have tried to been in the astronaut program.
Right.
I tell my kids, I tell my wife, when space travel becomes officially civilian, where you could just hop on it like an airplane, I will do it before I am gone from this earth.
Right.
I watch space documentaries. I read about it. I brought my kids to Air and Space about a year ago, and I was just as intrigued as they were, and I love seeing them just fascinated with it. But the exploration, the unknown, and all that stuff, that is what made me interested in space and in science and all that. Even when I heard, when they went up to the International Space Station and doing all these science experiments, I'm like, oh my God, those are scientists. It is amazing. I mean, I still look up at the moon now, and I was like, if I could just hop on one of those Apollo rockets and go up there, right now, that'd be fascinating to me.
Yeah, that would definitely be such a tremendous experience, to be able to do something like that. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Along those lines, if I'm not mistaken, I remember reading that it's actually easier to take classically trained scientists and teach them what they need to do to function in space than the other way around. Because in the old days, you used to take aviators,
yes,
and train them to be astronauts. But I think now, with space travel being a little bit different, they look for those with a rigorous scientific background that's trained classically, and it's easier to train them to do what they need to do in outer space, to perform some of these experiments that you just referred to. That's great. So it was things like that would keep your curiosity alive and keep the drive, and the constant quest of trying to look into the unknown, trying to figure out what you don't know yet. That played a big role in your growing up in the elementary school years.
Yeah, I remember my mom telling me that her parents, my grandparents, used to say they loved when I was a kid being around me because I always had questions.
There you go.
And I think my kids caught that from me because they have questions about everything, and I try not all the time to give them the 100% answer so they can try to figure out the answers to the questions themselves.
Right.
But I was always a curious person, and I think the curiosity led to my love for space and travel and what we don't know and what's out there. In fact, it's interesting that we're talking about space because NASA is finally, exploring manned space travel again with this Artemis program. I don't know if you heard of it, but they've postponed it. I don't know if Artemis 1 actually went out, but they postponed it like 2 or 3 times over the last week or two. Yeah. But they're supposed to, the third part of the program is supposed to land back on the moon again, which I thought was, done. So to me, that's fascinating that they're going to put this more, technology advanced, ship and rocket on the moon. But it's funny, even though they had a lot of problems back in the 60s, they seem to figure it out a lot better than they're doing right now, because they've canceled this thing like 2 or 3 times because of technical issues, which you would think, 50 years later, they would, what was I going to say? They would have figured it out. And one aside, I knew this girl, this is after schooling when I was, in work. I met her, through friends, and her good friend's mother married Neil Armstrong in his second marriage. And she met Neil Armstrong at the wedding.
Interesting.
And I had so many questions about him.
Right.
And it just fascinating that she got the chance to meet him.
Right.
Like, when I think about it now, I'm just like, oh, wow. She said very soft spoken, didn't like any of the, and I've heard these things about Neil Armstrong besides her, didn't like the notoriety and the fame, which is unlike Buzz Aldrin, who seemed to like it more. Right. But just that she got to like meet him and talk to him, and just, that was something I, before he passed away, I would love to have the opportunity for.
Right. Right. Would you actually consider, some of these folks like Neil Armstrong to be like an early role model for you, and as far as aspiring to do things? Or
yeah, it's funny. I remember being in when I was at Kennedy Space Center as a kid. I saw this film clip on one of the, it wasn't Neil Armstrong. It was probably Ed White or something like that. It was just one of these other astronauts, and I remember sitting there for 10, 15 minutes. Just being like mesmerized by every word that the man said, just the experience you have. And you hear about some of these, this is about the curiosity. Once some of these guys are out in space, and gals, they get this different perspective on life because they see our planet from a different perspective for real. It's not like seeing it on a computer screen or in a picture. Right. And their whole perspective on life when they get back down here changes, which is, for me is like I could see having the same thing. Right.
I would actually imagine that if there's ever the ultimate feeling of possibly feeling insignificant, it might be at that exact
and
point
I think
in
that's
time,
why. And I actually think that's why it gives you that perspective. Like, I mean, when you think about how far the moon is, and you look up there, and you say they were standing there and looking back at us. Right. Like that, it blows my mind. Yeah. Just even talking to you about it now, and I've thought about it, probably a million times. Right. Like when there's a full moon, I'm just like, oh my God, they were up there.
Yeah. Not many folks have ever had the opportunity to have that perspective.
It's less than 20,
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So when you Also, what I'm actually thinking about right now too is there's things to drive curiosity, but there's also things, throughout, growing up, elementary school into middle school that build discipline. I can only imagine, the academic, workload that you experienced in college and then dental school going on and specializing in orthodontics. It takes a fair level of discipline. It doesn't happen overnight. Can you think of anything like early on that actually started planting the seeds and developing good discipline, for academic studies and other things?
Yes, that's an easy one. It's probably one of the first times we met. Was youth football. Well, it's Pop Warner football.
Pop Warner football.
But it's youth football now. But
yeah,
the generation of coaches and mentors back then, if you weren't disciplined, you didn't survive.
Right.
And I remember, you can call it good or bad, being so, I guess, upset at a young age because of the discipline I thought was so hard on me. And specifically both my parents, but my mom, who you would think at a mom at that time would be like, oh, my little boy, let me, shield him or whatever. And she said, no, you got to take the good out of this lesson and ignore the part that's upsetting you, the bad. And she'd actually, I told you this before, joke to me, picture the coach naked, who's yelling at you.
Right.
And I had the opportunity to, meet some of my coaches from that age when I was older, and I actually thanked them because they gave me the discipline, the respect, and the drive, or helped instill on me these characteristics that are part of me to this day, will always be a part of me. And my son now plays youth football, and I'm one of the assistant coaches, and I'm not doing it because he's not playing in the NFL. But I want him to get the characteristics of teamwork, respect,
right,
discipline, drive, just being part of camaraderie, being part of a group that, when you're a group, win or lose, you're doing it all together. And those things, they're part of you forever. And you remember those things. I remember some of my coaches, some of my teams, good or bad. I mean, I remember the one team that was a really good team, and I remember how we all pulled for each other, and that's part of it's like a community, a community in a team. Your neighbors, your friends. It's all that in a team, and these are you're talking about when you're 8, 10, 12 years old, and that stuff that impresses on you so much. And
sure,
as you could tell from me talking, it's impressed on me to this day.
Right. Here's a question actually just popped into my head. Do you think it actually helps to actually have a source, like a coach, somebody other than a mother and a father, a mom and dad that you see every day, to help advance that discipline in you?
Yes. That's easy. Yes. I think sometimes the parents, because when my son is practicing now, I just, I want to make sure nothing bad happens to him, and I always keep an eye out for him. But I purposely try not to step in. And in fact, if I'm going to drill with him, I tell one of the other coaches to, him to be in their line or not with me, because I want it to be from somebody who has, can be objective about it and not, have that oh, that's my son, for good or bad. Some parents are really hard on their kids, and some are really easy on them. And I can't be super objective about it, even though I try to. So I just I hope he draws to other people who can do that for him.
Understood.
Yeah.
So as years progress, middle school hits.
Yeah.
Starting early years in high school. I would assume you have a good feeling as to, okay, who you are, what kind of student you are. When did the desire, so to become an orthodontist, at some point in time you would think that some ideas, lessons that you learned would all start to crystallize and start to form. It's okay, yeah, I think this is what I want to do in life, right? When do you think that point happened for you, saying, okay, this is what I would like to do? I would like to go into the dental field, more specifically orthodontics. when did that start to crystallize for you as a path forward for a career?
Yeah, I had a significant advantage to other people because my dad was an orthodontist. So I was in the office my whole youth, in and out. But I want to say my junior and senior summers of high school, I worked there.
Okay.
Just as a helper, And then I was in college as a freshman, and I think as a sophomore, those summers I worked there. I actually got college credit one year. It's a cooperative thing. Just had to, write some, had to keep like a journal and, maybe write a paper at the end, but you got like a few credits. But it was good because I got to see how it worked from all ends. From the doctor's end, I was an assistant from the assistant's end, and a little bit from the business end. But I also got to see if it's something I wanted to be a part of for the rest of my life, because it's no small decision like any career, but especially when you agree to go to professional school, like a healthcare school, medical, dental, vet, you name it, chiropractic, anything. Right. Once you're in, you're committed. Not 100%. You always could drop out and go somewhere else, but it's a big investment. And I'm not just talking about money investment. It's a big time and emotional investment. And if you're not going to like it, coming out, there are other things you could do with those degrees, but it's a lot to get that degree and not use it for what it's meant for. So I have to say, me having that experience definitely was a plus. And I think it was after my freshman college summer, I came home from Rutgers because I was, I lived at Rutgers, but I came home to Woodbridge. I knew that's what I wanted to do, which was good because it allowed me to work one more summer. And then I didn't work the following summer because I think I was preparing for the dental entrance board, which is called the DAT. Right. And, from there, I got in dental school and, that was it. But it was good that I had that experience. It was also good that I was at Rutgers. Interesting. Rutgers, big school, like big classes.
Yeah, very big. Yeah.
Big classes, big lecture classes. I remember freshman biology or, lecture of a few hundred people, and the class probably had 1,500 people if you looked at the full rolls with all the lectures and recitations or whatever you want to call it. But when I got to dental school, I'm in a lecture of, 90 plus people day one. Some people went to little schools, because it was the whole class. We had about 90 people, 90 something people. I think we started with 95 and then some, handful dropped out. Right. That some people from smaller schools are used to just classes of 20 people. And it was a big shock from them. Like, I got to listen and take notes, and then I got to, learn the stuff on my own, where they had more hand-holding, from a smaller professor. Right. So Rutgers, actually, in schools like that, because I knew a few other people from big schools like that, prepared us very, very well for the next step, which was a little bit of surprise, because I wasn't knowing what to expect when I got to dental school as far as my preparation. I did well at Rutgers, but I didn't know, was I going to be lagging? Was I going to be ahead? What did I know? What did I not know?
Right, right, exactly. Yeah. But so 90 people, that was your class.
I think we started with 95 and we graduated 82. I think we lost 13 people.
Lost a couple. Right.
Yeah, we lost a bunch the first semester or trimester, whatever it was. And then a couple others, they had like a remedial program dropped into that. So I think at the end we graduated just over 80 people.
Gotcha. So when you think about 90 spots, that's a highly competitive, avenue to get there. And you kind of hinted on something I kind of wanted to ask next. So you have a transition period from high school to Cook College at Rutgers. Yeah. Then you have another transition period from Cook College, into dental school. And I think you actually hit on the transition period from Cook to dental school. Yes. as the preparedness and the way that you had to prepare for yourself postured you in a very good position to do well. If we can just go back, high school years transitioning into college years, was it setting yourself up in high school to be prepared for what was going to be expected you of at Cook? Looking back on it, what do you think were the most the best decisions that you made during high school, and maybe the most impactful events or classes that actually happened to give you a good transition period to Rutgers?
That's interesting because I've never thought of that before.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No. Now that I'm thinking about it right here, and I like being put on the spot for stuff like this. Some of the upper level science classes, of course, like I remember we just did, anatomy in high school, but, we were dissecting like a frog and stuff like that.
Right.
That definitely helped. I remember not really science related, but there was a few teachers that really instilled more of a college, I guess, thinking to me. One was I took advanced placement calculus.
Okay.
And that class was small, so it goes against what I said about the big classes. But it was a lot of independent thinking and independent study.
Right.
And the teacher kept you on point, which really, 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 I think helped a lot. And then studying for the AP test, because I ended up getting college credit, helped a lot because that was a lot of independent study. Because you could do as much as you want in that classroom, but that test is so challenging and encumbering, you have to really be on it yourself. Yeah. And I think that helped a lot because, the term senioritis.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Kind of, I did really well in high school, so I kind of wanted to cruise senior year, which is fine, especially on the way out. But studying for that AP test, which was my second semester, was a full year, but that happened, right before graduation, studying for it and taking it. Yeah. Couldn't ramp down on that, which was good.
Right.
Really good. Also, going back to it again, so everyone's going to think I work for the NFL or something, but playing high school football helped immensely because just as disciplined and more disciplined than youth football.
Right.
And that helped me carry that discipline on to my studies. People don't understand a lot of sports that discipline you can carry into other parts of your life and definitely your studies. You got to get this done. This is done on time. Just like the coach says, you got to, we're doing this in practice. You don't get it done.
Yeah.
It's, you're going to run a lap or you're not going to win. Whatever it is, that can translate to other things. And, I think that's had a big, effect on me too.
That's good. Because I know there's a lot of psychologists now. They're actually focusing on what they consider to be grit within personality and how do you build it. And from what you're saying is, at least, the academic discipline and also the discipline on the field as well helped you develop that grittiness that you need to translate into the next level. So on to UMDNJ. I did a little bit of reading about it, and I found a little article that said, did you graduate at the top of your class at UMDNJ?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I was first in my class.
You're first in your class. Yes. That's a nice little accomplishment right there.
Yeah, it was. Well, partially it's hard work, but I wanted to be an orthodontist.
Right.
Orthodontist. Going into orthodontics at that time, and still even now, but even more that time, the orthodontic programs, unless if you had like a connection, which is less now than it was then, you had to be top 1 or 2 in your class. It was that competitive.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
I remember when I interviewed for my orthodontic residency, the programs, as you go around the interviews, especially in the Northeast, you'd see the same people because they all are like number 1, 2, or 3 in their class. Because the other ones need not apply. But that set such a goal for me from day one when I walked into that school that it created a drive for me. You got to be top in your class as best you can. I know some things are out of control, and you got to realize this isn't just studying. There's dental parts to it too from day one, dental anatomy, learning the first 2 years of dental school, you learn to, drill cavities on a mannequin, and they grade that stuff too. So it's not like you're going to medical school and you're just learning, physiology, anatomy, immunology, and if you get like hundreds on everything, you're top of your class. This is a comprehensive top of everything, and it carries from day one till the day you leave. Okay?
Right.
So it's challenging on a lot of fronts, and people's always said, and some of my medical colleagues might not agree, that dental school, especially the first 2 years, is harder than medical school because you're learning a new language on top of the science part. Because we're taking all the same classes as the medical doctors, plus you're learning dentistry as a new language, and how to work with your hands and all that dental part from day one. So first semester, you're learning how to carve a tooth out of wax. You're like, what the heck's that? But that's how you're learning your dexterity, but also the different parts of a tooth and how all that stuff. Second semester, you're already drilling mannequin teeth, which are made out of plastic, on a mannequin, and you're getting graded on that. And that's the first time pretty much any of us have ever done that. So some of the people who are good at one and good at the other, but the ones who are at the top of the class had to excel at pretty much everything. So I remember when ranks came at the end of the first year, I knew I had done well and grades were coming out, but I was super nervous because I was like, if I'm not in the top 2 or 3, it's going to be hard to catch up, because you got so much it's a trimester. You got 3 trimesters behind you already. Yeah. And when I was number 1 after the first year, I mean, I was ecstatic. It made for a great summer because I just knew my hard work had put me at a position, to keep going and excel. And out of my class, when I graduated, just me and my good buddy were the only 2 who got in orthodontic programs. Me at Columbia and him at NYU.
Wow.
So it was a big achievement, and I was like, and it just happened. Now that I look back on it, I'm so happy I picked orthodontics, even though I knew about it. You don't really know about it till you do something for a few years, but I love my job and love my specialty. So I'm so happy that I actually, put my mind to it and really focused to get to the point where I had the opportunity to become an orthodontist.
Excellent. I had no idea it was that much of a competitive enterprise, to get to that where you need to be for the to get your orthodontic certificate. So you went on to Columbia, correct?
Yes, in New York City.
Okay. So so you leave New Jersey, you go to New York?
Yeah, I lived in New York for a couple of years. It was great.
Excellent. How long was that program?
2 years. Now they're 3 years, but when I was applying, they were transitioning from 2 to 3 years, and Columbia was still a 2-year program. So 2 years you got a certificate. So it was a full 2 years, and it was a great education. Excellent.
So is it 2 years, and then is it another test involved to get certification, or is it something that's looked at over the course of the 2 years and say, okay, you did well enough, or is there like a final exam?
Here's how it works. There's multiple steps. So number 1, you have to be a licensed dentist in New Jersey, which has nothing to do with being an orthodontist. It works really weird. So you get your dental license when you graduate dental school. And how you get it is there's a 2-part test. One is written, called the National Board. And then number 2 is clinical based, where you actually work on live people and they grade you anonymously. So you have to do cavity prep. You have to do this. You have to do that. And you don't, at the time, and I don't know, it might have changed since then, you graduate and you don't get the results till, I want to say, a couple of months after. The thing that would have worked against somebody who went in an orthodontic program is, let's say you failed that and you had to go back. You're not doing regular dentistry anymore. You're already learning orthodontics, but then you have to go back and keep practicing this stuff that you might never do for the rest of your life. So it's kind of weird, but luckily I passed that right there. So you get, and that's a very hard exam because you could be as well prepared as possible. If something comes up weird, especially on a patient, or you do some mannequin work, it can work against you. Then in the orthodontic program, you have to get your orthodontic certificate to be a specialty dentist in New Jersey, which you apply for when you get what you call your specialty number or certificate in New Jersey. That's how you can say you're an orthodontist. To graduate from Columbia, you have to finish the 2 years, of course, and pass all the classes. You also had to do a research project at the end of the 2 years and take the first part of your orthodontic boards, which is given once a year. So it's pretty arduous, especially at the end, because getting this research certificate and studying for that board exam is a lot. But it's definitely manageable. It was a great program with great people as far as faculty and classmates or people.
Excellent.
So I loved it, and by then you're super prepared for all this stuff. So
Excellent.
It was good.
So it seems like it's almost an 8-year endeavor from day one at dental school until you finish with your certificate in orthodontics.
Yeah, 6 years. 4 plus
6
2.
years.
Yeah, 4
6
plus
years.
2.
4 plus 2. Okay.
And then they just basically, if you get all that done and you have your specialty certificate, you're thrown out in the real world and you're on your own, which is kind of scary.
Right.
I still think back to those days. It's kind of scary.
Right.
And I had a mentor of my father. I was working with him for a couple years, and he was scaled down to part-time, but still, until you do it for real, when you don't have a professor looking over you or somebody you could say, is this right, is this wrong, you're the ultimate decision maker. It's a little nerve-wracking.
Right. I can imagine. So that brings you to today. You've had your practice. For how long have you had the practice?
Let me see. I've been there since July 2001, so 21 years.
21 years.
Yeah.
So going on 21 years in the practice of orthodontics.
Yes.
What keeps that drive alive today for you? You see your patients. Your patients seem to absolutely love you. Great ratings. Like I said, you consistently rank among the top, which is an achievement amongst all orthodontists. But you keep at the top, which is a whole other level. It's one thing to make it there, but to consistently perform year after year and to consistently hold that spot amongst your peers is quite challenging. So what does it for you today to keep that alive? Is there anything different? So I know like drives and motivations, they could change over the years. Has anything changed, or do you think it's still the same basic tenets for yourself?
Yes and no, or like
Right.
when I was in my late 20s, I got out of school. My drive was, of course, I was young. I wanted to prove myself, to myself, to my family, to the community. Excuse me. This was a community I grew up in, so me entering practice there was a big deal to me. Now I see a lot of people I grew up with, their kids,
Right.
It's interesting, a lot of grandkids of people my dad treated, and I've even seen a few great caring kids. It's crazy when you think about it. But that drive, and at the time I wasn't married, so my life was, my practice and whatever social life I had, my family, my friends and stuff like that. The practice, when I first went in, the first couple years, it was a struggle for me, not in a bad way, because like I said, like you're always second guessing yourself. Clinically with patients, how to deal with patients and parents, communicating with them. Also business-wise, you get none of that training. But once it got rolling, the practice grew because of, hard work of me. I got staff there, my team that I wanted, and we grew, and it was great. And then we kind of plateaued, and kind of like the peak of our plateau was a little after the Great Recession in the late 2000s. Which was a blessing in disguise, because it made me and my team reevaluate like what we were doing and kind of like make things more efficient. Because when you're growing and it's easy because you're the new guy in town and everybody wants to go see you, you try to stay on point, and then maybe get a little lazy about things. And then after that, I got married and I had my kids, and so it was a big juggling act, and I had to learn how to do that with family and my practice. And then what's interesting is COVID hit, and we had just right before COVID, we had kind of grown a little bit again through some of the things we changed after the Great Recession, and just like I think some things are just happenstance,
Yeah.
like you think you're doing something great, but it's just the way things go. And then I don't know if I told you this, the American Association of Orthodontists decided to partner with the Wharton School in the business school at University of Pennsylvania.
Okay. Yeah.
To do an online course on management, orthodontic management.
Okay.
Which some things they do I don't necessarily agree with, but this is one of the best things the American Association of Orthodontists, which is our national group, ever did. So it was post-COVID. You do it all on your own at home. Every week you get a lesson. It's some Wharton instructors, it's some orthodontists. They pair it together. They give you management skills and all that stuff. And it was 6 to 8 weeks, I forget. And each week, you know, you did courses on your own. It started on Wednesday and it finished the following Tuesday, and you just had to get the coursework done. And I realized that I missed school. And
interesting.
My wife thinks I'm crazy. So my point is, when that finished, I researched another Wharton class that you could take online on management. Okay. And that was not orthodontic related at all. And that actually was better than the first course, because that was hardcore management for any business.
Right.
And when it was Wednesday to Tuesday again, when Wednesday morning, because I'm off some Wednesdays, most Wednesdays, when Wednesday morning would pop over and I'd drop my kids at school, I'd sit at our kitchen, I had my laptop out, my notebook out, a cup of coffee, and I'd be happier than anybody to start this week's lesson again.
Right.
And my wife would look at me like, who are you?
Who does this? Right?
Yeah, she's like, at our age, who is looking excited for the next lesson of school? But I realized I missed learning. Like, I learn every day. Everybody learns every day.
Right.
But I missed learning this way. Like, I was
with the formal structure around it.
I was the kid that I didn't show up for class like and sat in the front or anything like that. But I look forward to the formal structure of learning. I look forward to being in a lecture, because we didn't have online lectures when I was in school. Look forward to being in a lecture, doing some of the study work on my own, because not that you had to study, but you had to each week you had to do an assignment, and you had to go back through your notes or whatever, and that was your form of like studying or whatever.
Right.
And I loved it. So honestly, I told my wife, I was like, I'm taking the summer off, and I'm going to find another management course. And I have a few in mind that I've done some minor research on for the fall, winter.
Okay.
So I'm going to do it again. And they're all different types of management, because there's everything out there now with all schools or some organizations. It doesn't even have to be a business school.
Right.
But honestly, I didn't realize what I was missing till I learned it from both courses.
Right.
Like,
understood.
Like, I'd been dealing, and now realize a lot of it is just getting comfortable with people. I've had some of the same staff since I started, or team since I started, and some who I haven't had since I started have had for 10 to 15 years, so we know each other like family.
Right.
We've been through good and bad with each other, both professionally and personally. We know each other's kids and families. And then when I saw different ways to deal with people, to get the most out of them, for them to get the most out of me, light bulbs went off in my head that I didn't know, because they don't teach this stuff in dental school.
Right.
So I was just going on from what I knew from day one, from what I taught myself or my dad taught me, or I went to sometimes you got to get continuing education, which we call CE. So you go to a course on like one day, and the course is 4 to 5 hours, and you listen in the morning, and then you have lunch, and then you're looking at your watch of like when to leave, because you just want to get your credit. And when I was doing these on Wednesdays and some nights, I do the bulk of it on a Wednesday, these online courses, and then I would do some of the assignments at night before when my kids went to sleep. I was, I wasn't rushing to get through it. I just wanted to get the most out of it. And, it really, I've almost thought of like going back and getting a master's in management, but right now with my kids being so involved in activities and sport, I just don't have the time. I give you credit. Now I know your kids are older, but I give you credit for doing a master's right now. But I think when my kids are older, I might do it, whether in high school and college, and there's less, right now I'm coaching my son, I'm going to coach my daughter, I just don't have the time. But this 5 or 6 hours a week, I totally have the time carved out.
Right.
So like you, I found out I love learning.
Yeah.
And that increased my drive, like me wanting to learn more.
Absolutely, well said. I could relate to a lot to what you just said, and when it comes to the whole management, I find it to be a little eye-opening. Some things that you take on the surface, especially when it comes to management, on the surface, when you read it for the first time, it seems like, okay, this actually seems to be very commonsensical, okay? But the whole idea is to take that common sense and put it into practice.
Yep, because you never do it.
Because you never.
Well, you don't know you're not doing it.
You don't know you're not doing it. That's exactly
100%.
That's exactly it.
I was like, I'm doing. Oh wait,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not doing that.
Exactly. So there you go. You know, keep on learning. Don't stop. Keep that drive alive.
Yes.
And it keeps you, you know, good things come. And you think good things come as a result, as the pursuit of that.
Yes.
And there we have the story from Dr. Scott Galkin. Scott, thank you so much for coming today, giving your insight and things that, you know, make you tick and, you know, give you that drive, you know, because I want, you know, I want folks to take that, you know, all these different perspectives away and to be able to include them in their own lives, you know, in some way, shape, or form. And we appreciate, you know, you coming by tremendously.
Oh, thank you. This is great. I enjoyed it, and I can't wait to listen to some of your other guests, because this is great. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Scott, and thank all of you for tuning into this new platform, Renewed Volition. I'm a true believer and hope you are too. Until then, be well. We'll catch you on the flip side, everybody. Have a good one.